Hi everyone, welcome to Ask a Property Manager. Today is episode number 50, as a matter of fact. Today is December 9th, 2020. I'm coming to you live from Studio 2.0 here at Own Buffalo. I'm Andrew Schultz, Principal Broker of Own Buffalo, Inc. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about rental assistance agencies, how to find a tenant that has skipped out on you. We're going to answer some landlord questions from around the country and so much more. But before we jump into all of that, we're going to plug our social media. You can find new episodes of Ask a Property Manager every Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page over at facebook.com/Buffalo Foreclosed Homes. You can also find replays on Facebook and on YouTube that same day, youtube.com/OwnBuffalo. Follow us over on Instagram. We post a lot of content there that we don't necessarily post on Facebook or YouTube, usually little quick shots of what's going on in our business and things like that. And last but not least, don't forget about the 30-minute consults over at ownbuffalo.com. These are only going to be around for a few more weeks. I've actually gone ahead and added my available times. Oops, looks like I did not refresh my calendars though. I actually went ahead and added all of my available times from now through the end of the year. So you can see we have a couple of time slots open for next week, a couple of time slots open for the following week leading up to Christmas. And that's going to be it, guys, because we're going to be out of here the 28th, 29th, and 30th. So if you're looking to take advantage of those free consults over at ownbuffalo.com, you can definitely grab a hold of one of those. There's only a few time slots left. Don't miss out on that opportunity because, like I said, after the first of the year, the free consults do disappear. So that's definitely something that you may want to consider taking advantage of. If you have a question, you're not sure how to go about finding an answer for it, reach out, let us know. We'll see what we can do to help you. Last but not least, don't forget about the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. New episodes of the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast come out every Thursday morning, which means that there will be a new podcast episode for you tomorrow. This week's episode, we're taking a look at late paying tenants and how to get them on a payment plan. We're going to be talking about the importance of both shower curtains and renter's insurance. I'm sure you can figure out where that one's going. And how to properly give gifts to tenants during the holidays. So don't miss out on that. You can catch new episodes of the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast over at rentprep.com/podcast or anywhere that podcasts are heard. Let's jump right into our first news article of the day. We're going to be looking at some local stuff here today. And these are both coming out of Buffalo Business First. The first article I wanted to take a quick look at here is this one with regards to an $80 million distribution center on Grand Island. And both of these articles tie into the conversation that we had started last week, talking about different places to look for investment opportunity in real estate outside of residential real estate, typical landlord-tenant style relationship. Looking at things like self-storage, looking at things like warehousing, other means of investing in real estate outside of traditional basic residential rental properties. And these two articles both kind of support what we were talking about last week, with there being a tremendous amount of opportunity out there outside of the residential real estate space. So we'll start here with this one. A Quest details plan for an $80 million distribution center on Grand Island. If you're outside of the Buffalo region, this is actually a continuation of a previous proposal that was put in place a few months ago by Amazon to build a distribution facility on Grand Island. That has actually fallen apart. This is sort of the replacement plan. A vacant Grand Island parcel rejected by Amazon could be the viable solution for a nagging commercial real estate issue, the lack of available warehouse and distribution space, according to a Quest development. If you remember last week, that was one of the things we had talked about. The Williamsville-based developer is willing to bet $80 million on a solution. They proposed building a 1 million square foot warehouse and distribution center on a 145-acre Long Road site. Until 4 months ago, that site was targeted by a development conglomerate, Trammell Crow, for a 4-story, 38 million square foot Amazon regional distribution center. The project was pulled in August after resident opposition. Citing the growing need for high bay warehouse and distribution space, a Quest, which owns the property, came up with its own plan. It's just brutal out there when it comes to the lack of distribution space, Michael Huntress, a Quest vice president, said. A CBRE Buffalo annual review of warehouse and distribution space found that 67 of the 67.11 million square foot of space in Buffalo, there's only a 2.6% vacancy rate. That's incredibly low. We're looking at opportunities because of the lack of space, said Tom Kucharski, Invest Buffalo Niagara president and CEO. According to the documents, the single-story Equest building would be just over 1 million square feet. The project, including parking, would occupy 138 acres. Hunter says that he has no tenant signed, but talks are underway with prospective tenants. The need is growing and not going away. Grand Island's review of the project began with a December 2nd informational meeting. The town will begin its formal review on December 14th. Assuming the building gets approved, construction will start next year, and the complex should be rent-ready by 2022. So this goes right into what we were talking about last week, with there being a real lack of warehouse and distribution space. They even gave a percentage here, a total vacancy rate of 2.6%, which is incredibly low, incredibly low. So there's definitely a need for warehousing space here in the Western New York region. That being said, it's not necessarily the most inexpensive thing to get into. If you need to build a large warehouse or something like that, this might be a play for larger developers or something like that. But you may find some sort of an avenue where you can get into something like this via a REIT or some sort of a syndication deal, something like that. Definitely a little bit different situation than your typical run-of-the-mill residential rental property. Our second article is located here in the Buffalo region as well. Again, coming from Buffalo Business First, developers' plans for the Goodyear Mansion shift from hotel to furnished apartments. We talked about this extensively last week. The COVID-19 pandemic has prompted a developer behind the $10 million makeover of Delaware Ave's Goodyear Mansion to scrap his plans for a boutique hotel. Instead, developer Paul Kolkmeyer will shift from a 28-room boutique hotel to the same number of furnished apartments. Because of COVID and the impact it's had on the hospitality industry, any sort of financing relating to a hotel has all but dried up. Plus, original plans remain for 22 market-rate unfurnished apartments at the building at 888 Delaware Ave. They will be your typical market-rate apartments, he said. Through his 888 Delaware LLC affiliate, he paid $1.3 million for the 60,000 square foot one-time home of Buffalo attorney and civic leader Charles Waterhouse Goodyear. Goodyear had built the home in 1903, and it was one of several along Delaware Avenue's Millionaires Row from the early 1900s. The complex is being rebranded as the Goodyear Mansion and Residences. Kolkmeyer didn't rule out converting the furnished apartments back to a boutique hotel if market conditions change. My guess is that that would be years off, if at all, he said. Renovation work will start early in 2021. Besides serving as Goodyear's private residence, the building was home to Bishop McMahon High School for several decades and later was the Oracle Charter School. Again, this ties right into what we were talking about last week. We've seen other developers in the Buffalo region making the same moves, going from hotel space to apartment space. It happened with the AM&A's building, which was meant to be a mixed-use hotel and commercial space. That's now going to be, I believe, mixed-use apartment and hotel. I'm sorry, apartment and possibly some office space. But that was an entire project geared toward developing a downtown hotel, and now it's going to be apartments. I believe we also talked about a couple of other developers that have plans to do the same thing. I know Douglas Jamal has been making some changes to how he's setting up the building at the Seneca Tower in Buffalo as well. That's going to have more apartments in it than what was originally planned, I believe. So there's definitely some active changes happening in the market based on what people are looking to do and what their goals are in investment. There's definitely a shift out of the hospitality industry for sure, back towards residential rental. We talked about warehousing space. There's going to be there already is a huge need for that. I mean, look at how much Amazon has grown just in the last year. They need more warehouse space now more than ever. That project in Grand Island, that was actually meant to be an Amazon warehouse that is now going to be somebody else's warehouse. So hopefully they're able to put a project together on that and keep things moving forward. Jump over to some funny stuff here. I'm not sure where I pulled these from, probably one of the Facebook groups, but this one definitely made me laugh, being 35 and growing up on Korn and all that type of music. That definitely made me laugh when I saw it. And then maybe a little bit less humorous, maybe a little bit more eye-opening. This was submitted to me by, I think this one came off the Rent Prep for Landlords Facebook group, and this was either that or one of the home inspectors' Facebook pages. I can't remember which, but you could see just this massive crack in the concrete pad of this home, and all of the shifting that's been caused as a result. That's a nightmare right there, man. Not the kind of insurance claim that you would want to have to get involved with, that's for certain. All right, let's jump into our questions from housing providers around the country. This first one comes to us. All of these actually come to us from the Rent Prep for Landlords Facebook group, which I don't know if I've plugged that recently or not. If you're looking for an excellent free resource that you can tie into to ask questions from other housing providers, like you encounter a situation, you're not sure how to handle it, the Rent Prep for Landlords Facebook group is probably one of the greatest free resources out there to take advantage of. You could find that over at facebook.com/groups/rentprep. Make sure that when you are answering the questions, because there is a little bit of a questionnaire that you have to answer before you can join the group, mention that you heard it either on the podcast or from Ask a Property Manager so that they know where you came from. So back to the topic at hand here, storm doors. I'm currently living in a single-family home that will become another rental. I put on a storm door for myself while I'm already here, partially to reduce the draft from the existing front entry door. I plan to replace the front entry door and am considering not reinstalling the storm door, thinking it is one more maintenance/breakage issue. I try to keep my property as simple as possible, yet nicely livable. What are your thoughts and experiences about the cost-benefit of a storm door? There's plenty of light in the house without it. FYI, it will be a mid-level rental, not upscale or high-end, thanks. Personally, when it comes to storm doors, I would leave it until it breaks, and then I would remove it and not replace it. We've started taking the stance with storm doors of just not replacing them after they are damaged, unless it's on a higher-end rental that we can justify a nicer storm door on. But anytime you have to install one of the cheaper storm doors, they're just that, they're cheap. We've literally installed storm doors and come back the next day and found that the wind has already caught it because a tenant didn't make sure it was latched, it didn't latch itself properly, whatever the case, and it's already been torqued. Like, that's money literally right through a paper shredder. There's no point. So unless it's a property that we can justify a higher end storm door on, we typically will leave a storm door until it is damaged, and then we'll remove it, and we don't bother to replace them. Have we had pushback from tenants on this? No, not at all. Maybe one time I've had a tenant request that the storm door be put back on, and when we explained the situation to them, they dropped the issue immediately. It wasn't even something that was a big deal to them. It was more of a, hey, you guys removed a storm door, are you putting one back on? And when we explained why we decided not to, they completely understood. So that would be my recommendation on storm doors. If it's something that's already there, I would leave it until it breaks. If it's something that is already broken, I would just remove it, and I don't know as though I would worry so much about replacement on something like that, because it's just money down the drain in a lot of instances, I feel. Charging for painting. Can you charge a renter to repaint the wall for stains if you have flat paint on it? I have several of these stains around the house, and the renter says she could not clean them because it's flat wall paint. Most of it is food sticking to the walls. So we use flat wall paint in our rentals as well. And the reason we use flat wall paint is because when we have to go in and do a touch-up, it's very easy for us to go in and do that touch-up without it flashing. Anytime you move into like a semi-gloss or something like that, every time you go to make a touch-up, you're going to see that touch-up unless you repaint an entire section of wall or an entire wall, because it's going to flash. There's going to be a difference in the sheen between the old paint and the new paint, even if they're both semi-gloss, because that sheen does wear a little bit over time. So going back to the question at hand, yeah, you can charge for this. This is damage to your rental. This is not normal wear and tear. Throwing food on the walls is not normal wear and tear, and you've got some grease spots on these walls that are going to need more than just a quick coat of flat paint. You're probably going to have to, spend some time kilsing the wall to cover the grease spot. You may have to kills it more than one time to get through to make sure that that grease spot is fully covered before you can just repaint the wall. So it's not like this is just going to be a quick touch-up sort of a situation. This is definitely not what I would consider to be normal wear and tear. This is definitely what I would consider to be tenant damage, and we would charge them for something like this. So that would be my recommendation to you as well. Make sure you're following whatever procedure you have to when it comes to documenting and deducting from a security deposit. Make sure that you're getting the tenant whatever letter they're supposed to have within whatever time frame it's supposed to be, but definitely charge for the time and labor that it's going to take you to take care of that paint issue. Locating tenants to collect. I have a question for the group. Last year, my tenant trashed my house. I took him to court, and the court rendered a judgment in my favor. He owed me a total of $7,000. The lawyer helped me garnish his wages for only $150 a month. After 3 payments, he then stopped paying me. Then the lawyer asked the court to order his friend boss to intervene. His boss said he quit and left. The boss has no idea where his friend is. How should I find this guy and ask the rest? I'm sorry. How should I find this guy to ask for the rest of my money back? Any idea? I'm running out of options. Thank you in advance. A little bit of a struggle to get through that one, but I think we got there. So I think what's happening here is this guy was employed by a friend and the boss may be covering for him or something like that. But really what they're trying to determine is how do I get my money? So if his wages were garnished, if he's still at the same place of employment, there would be no, the wage should continue to be garnished. So it sounds like, well, you said, the boss said that he quit and left. So it sounds like he's no longer there. The boss has no idea where the guy went, or so he claims. How do we go about finding this tenant so that we can get our garnishment back in place? So there's a few different things that you can do. The first thing you might want to try, this is going to be the least expensive option, would be to mail a letter marked return receipt requested to his last known good address, which may very well be your rental. What'll happen is the post office will receive the letter, and assuming you'll get the piece of mail back regardless, assuming they have a forwarding address. If the tenant filled out a change of address form when he moved, the post office can provide you with that forwarding address. So that works if the tenant went ahead and actually did what he was supposed to do and changed his forwarding address. A lot of tenants I have found don't necessarily do that. So that's the least expensive option for you to pursue. But it probably will also generate the least results. The next thing I would recommend would be possibly hiring some sort of a skip trace company. And you can just do a Google search to find one of these. There's a bunch of them out there that will help you to locate somebody who you are having trouble locating. The price on this ranges. I mean, you could pay anywhere from $20 up to $100, I would assume, depending on how deep they have to go to try to find this person. If you have a rental application for the tenant, you may find some friends and family on there that you can reach out to and try to locate. If they had references or anything listed on the rental application, whether or not those people are going to have any interest in talking to you or helping you out, probably a pretty slim chance there, but it might be worth a shot if you have the contact info for those people. You never know. They may have somebody that at the time they filled out the application was a great personal reference that they've since wronged, and now that person's got an axe to grind and will absolutely tell you where they're located. So that might be something to consider as well. The final option I have for you here is send this to a collection agency. There are some collection agencies out there that will work with smaller landlords that may have only 1 or 2 things that they need to send to collections. Typically, it's a contingency-based collection where they only make money if they collect, and they're going to take some percentage of whatever the amount is that's owed. So in this instance, if you have a $7,000 balance, they may take 1/3 of that or 1/3 of whatever's collected as their contingency fee. But if that means that you get the other 2/3 of your $7,000 back, you may find that that's very well worth your time and energy to go through and do that process. So I would say in order, I would probably start with trying to find the person based off of references like from rental application or something like that. After that, I would probably go the send the letter route, the return address requested route. After that, I would probably look into the skip tracing company, and then finally I would send it to collections. That would probably be the easiest way to pursue it. If you do find out where the guy is before it goes to collections, though, at that point, I would think that you would be able to, I'm not sure what state you're in, it doesn't say in the post here. I would think that you'd be able to reapproach the court and get wage garnishment at the new employer, assuming he's employed again. So that's how I would handle that one. Good luck to you. That's a pretty substantial sum to be out. Hopefully you're able to find him and get something out of it. Sometimes I know you can't necessarily draw blood from a stone, but hopefully in your instance, you're able to get something back out of that tenant. Pandemic assistance programs. Has anyone received rent payments through a COVID-19 rental assistance program? Our tenant lost her job and is trying to get me to do some paperwork for this. What is the process like? So from what we have seen coming through our office, the paperwork tends to be similar to, but substantially less than that of a Section 8 program. Typically, there's not an inspection that has to be passed before the funds can be released. They're trying to get these funds out and into the hands of tenants and landlords as quickly as possible. So typically, you're going to have some sort of an agreement. You're going to have some sort of a W-9. and then they're either going to cut you a check or they're going to want your bank info so that they can do a direct deposit right into your bank account. My strongest recommendation to you is to read the paperwork top to bottom, left to right, front and back, up and down, 2, 3, 4 times until you understand everything that you are committing yourself to. The reason I say that is because there are some pretty onerous terms that have been talked about going into these assistance programs, such that you might not be able to evict the tenant after taking that assistance program. You may not be able to evict the tenant for 6 months, a year, something like that, which if you take this program, this money from this program, let's say that brings the tenant current, but they continue to not pay rent, you now have another 6 months or a year that you can't evict that tenant. And you're right back in the same boat that you were. I'd also heard rumors about some of these programs trying to work in issue, like things like right of first refusal. So if you wanted to turn around and sell your rental property within X number of months or years of accepting this assistance, you may have to give right of first refusal to the current occupant, be it the tenant or in some sort of a government agency or something like that. Again, rumors. I have not seen anything that has that written into it. I know it was heavily talked about. As a matter of fact, I believe it was talked about as part of one of the federal relief packages, but I don't believe that any of that was actually pushed through. I definitely have seen the no eviction caveats though, so be sure that you understand exactly what it is that you're signing before you sign that COVID, that paperwork to get funds from one of these COVID relief programs. Definitely understand what it is that you're signing. I'm not saying they're good. I'm not saying they're bad. If it's what you need to do to get funds back into your account to keep yourself moving forward, by all means. But please understand what it is that you're agreeing to before you sign on that dotted line. That pretty much wraps things up for this week's episode of Ask a Property Manager. Thank you all so much for watching. I love producing Ask a Property Manager, and you can help us to improve by dropping a question in the comments either on Facebook or on YouTube, and your question may be answered in an upcoming episode. If you enjoyed this content or if we brought some value to your day, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. YouTube and Facebook both push videos based on community feedback, so every like, comment, subscribe, and share helps us to grow and reach more people. We're going to be back next week with an all-new episode next Wednesday, December 16th at 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll be back with an all-new show you won't want to miss. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.